I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, North Korea.
Kim Jong Il. He's so elusive, virtually no one outside of the country knows if he's alive or dead.
Reporting the most isolated country in the world. The Wall Street meltdown.
I read the news today. Oh boy.
Troubled times for the U.S. newspaper industry. A cartoon has a big impact on politics in South Africa. And oh dear leader, Kim Jong Il gets the Super Mario treatment.
Ein Sechs-Mächte-Gespräch. Vorsicht, die wollen mit dir verhandeln. Ignorieren und weitermachen. Nachdem du an den...
Welcome back. What do we really know about the Democratic People's Republic of Korea? There are no Western news bureaus in North Korea. Few foreign reporters get access to the country or its people. And the domestic media are under strict state control. The news coming out of Pyongyang is so restricted that when their leader, Kim Jong Il, did not turn up for the country's 60th birthday celebrations recently, the world's media went into speculation overdrive, with rumors that he had suffered a stroke or even that he had died years ago and has since been replaced by a double. But where does the real story lie, and how much truth is there coming out of the rumor mill? That's our starting point this week: propaganda and the pitfalls of reporting the closed world of Kim Jong Il's North Korea. September 9th, and the world's last Stalinist state celebrates its 60th anniversary. For the global media, though, it was a case of what was wrong with this picture. There was no sign of North Korea's leader, Kim Jong Il.
The mysterious leader of one of the world's most mysterious countries is now missing from view.
A Japanese expert on North Korea claims the country's leader, Kim Jong Il, died of diabetes back in 2003.
Like his father before him, Kim Jong Il is North Korea, a seemingly all-powerful ruler whose life, like the country he leads, is shrouded in mystery.
Well, I think you always get a cult or a mythology surrounding someone in the absence of hard facts. I think with Kim Jong Il, you've got someone about whom we do not know that many hard facts, and I think this has led to the media rumours of the last week or two about his whereabouts.
Inevitably, if there's a great deal of secrecy in the state, news is going to be controlled and rumour is going to be very powerful. I mean, it is a simple fact that Kim Jong Il hasn't been heard speaking in public since 1993.
North Korea is a regime arming with missiles and weapons of mass destruction. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil.
When trying to understand the North Korea story and the nuclear angle, it's worth remembering that much of the Western media, particularly American media, have aided the Bush administration's demonizing of two other states in the infamous axis of evil, Iraq and Iran.
Frightening new details on a story you heard first right here on Fox News Channel. North Korea is now rebuilding its main nuclear facility.
But when it comes to reporting North Korea, sorting out the propaganda from both inside and outside the country is made much more difficult by an almost complete lack of access.
Each filming is closely monitored. It is forbidden to film this propaganda village.
Clearly, the North Koreans are very suspicious of journalists. They think that all journalists are spies. Essentially, they don't allow journalists in unless they're very, very tightly controlled. And most journalists will be shown the monuments, if you like, of the main city, Pyongyang.
Mr. Kim and Mr. Chung, our guides from the North Korean government, were always lending a helpful hand.
So when stories about North Korea make it into the global media, how do they get there?
We have to take into account what reports we're getting from neighbouring countries, and here I'm speaking of the South Korean news agency, Japanese sources, and even Chinese sources. So, for example, the Japanese news agency, who were reporting that the Japanese Prime Minister was saying, oh yes, we've got information about his health, but we're not sure, how things will go. That tells us that things are happening under the surface and that information is coming out.
North Korean officials are describing the reports of their leader's ill health as groundless.
There are various rumours from time to time of his demise. There were 3 or 4 years ago, it was reported that he could have been killed in a railway explosion on the border with China. So, South Korean intelligence, Japanese intelligence speculates and sometimes gets it wrong.
What are North Koreans watching and hearing? almost nothing that their government doesn't approve of. The state-run TV channel is a cheerleader for the government. This breathless anchorwoman reporting a successful missile test in 2006 is a prime example of news reporting inside the country.
The first thing to remember is that the media in North Korea is very strictly controlled by the state. The main source of information for the people is the Central Radio Network. There is also a central TV station and a cultural TV channel, but not everyone has access to TVs. When it comes to the internet, it's really just reserved for the elite, and the same goes for mobile phones.
The anti-US propaganda is totally prevalent in the DPRK. There is absolutely no access in North Korea to outside media whatsoever. It's illegal to listen to foreign radio stations, even if you're able to pick them up. It is, not surprisingly, called the Hermit Kingdom, and for very good reason.
One of the few broadcasters beaming a signal into North Korea is Radio Free Asia. It is funded by the U.S. government. The Korean government sees it as an American propaganda tool and regularly jams the station's signal.
We have some stringers, de facto stringers from North Korea in Seoul and somewhere around the Korean peninsula. And those stringers can contact inside North Korea. So the outside broadcasting is very essential to their daily life, and North Korean propaganda media never carry that kind of news.
Kim Jong Il's official biography says he is a former film director who, before succeeding his father, led North Korea's propaganda efforts. He considers himself to be an expert on the media. It is ironic that despite all the propaganda surrounding this story, the global media know so little about Kim and the country he leads.
In a country like North Korea, where the official media doesn't give us so much information, we are obliged to look further and to look around in order to try and find out what's happening. So you could say that we often find out more from what we don't hear from North Korea. But of course, what we need to do then is know how far to take that and where the truth lies.
Here's how our Global Village voices see the reporting of North Korea.
I think the coverage of North Korea by the Western media is very fair. It's not shrill or over the top. It's actually just looks at the situation very, very carefully and methodically. For example, the nuclear crisis, it analyzes it very well, that North Korea does use nuclear weapons as a possible tool against collapse of their economy, and they use this as a threat to get the West and South Korea to give it help.
There are rumours that Kim Jong Il is no longer with us, and we've heard those sorts of rumours before, then it really shouldn't come as any surprise. Communist regimes are known for covering up who's dead and who's not. It wasn't that long ago that the Soviet Union had covered up the death of Leonid Brezhnev, but apparently had passed away for years, and all his public appearances were with a dummy operated by a foot pump.
If you have a beef that you'd like to share on the global news media and how they report the world, email us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net. We have the technology to get you on the air as one of our Global Village voices. Time now for Listening Post News Bites. Political cartoons have a way of making headlines. Those Danish cartoons that caused outrage in parts of the Muslim world a couple of years ago are a good example of that. And now South Africa has a cartoon controversy of its own. The cartoon was published in one of the country's largest papers, the Sunday Times. It showed Jacob Zuma, the leader of the African National Congress, preparing to rape a woman who symbolizes the South African justice system. Zuma, who last month was acquitted on a charge of rape, also faces corruption charges that could force him to drop out of the presidential election. Thousands of Zuma's supporters protested after the cartoon was published, and an ANC youth leader has vowed to, quote, eliminate any force, unquote, that blocks Zuma's path to the presidency. The cartoonist, who goes under the name of Zapiro, said it was that kind of talk, the threat against the justice system, that led him to pen the cartoon. Tens of millions of DVDs of a controversial film about radical Islam are being delivered to the doorsteps of American voters this month inside their newspapers. The film is called Obsession, Radical Islam's War Against the West, and it's the work of an Israeli-Canadian filmmaker, Raphael Shor.
This film, Obsession, is without exaggeration one of the most important films of our time.
The film is being sent inside newspapers in swing states in the run-up to the November election, although the film's makers deny that their intent is to sway voters into the John McCain camp. The newspapers that accepted money to distribute the DVDs include the New York Times, the Miami Herald, and the Philadelphia Inquirer. We know of one paper, the Greensboro News and Record in North Carolina, that turned down the money and refused to participate. The paper said the film was divisive, played on people's fears, and served no educational purpose. Belarus holds parliamentary elections on September 28th, but a new study indicates that the country's publicly funded media are giving opposition candidates short shrift. According to the report by the Belarus Association of Journalists and the media watchdog group Reporters Without Borders, the state-run media back the current government of Alexander Lukashenko and do not allow opposition candidates to get their message across. 3 Belarusian newspapers did not quote a single party apart from the one in power during the period studied. The European Union has repeatedly said it will lift sanctions against the Lukashenko government only if the elections are free and fair, and that includes media coverage. China says the relaxed rules governing foreign journalists introduced for the Beijing Olympics will expire next month. Those rules allowed reporters to interview Chinese citizens without government approval and gave the foreign media more freedom to travel in China. Loosening controls on the media formed an important part of the country's bid to win the 2008 Games, and those rules were put to the test in the run-up to the Games by protests in Tibet and the Sichuan earthquake. The Chinese government is now set to issue a new code of conduct for the media next month, which critics expect will mean a resumption of business as usual for the censors in Beijing. Some people don't take kindly to being edited.
Для нас это особая трагедия, потому что за многие годы совместного существования
Russia's Prime Minister, Vladimir Putin, is reported to be furious that the American news network CNN only ran short excerpts from an exclusive interview he granted the network. Rumors are circulating in Moscow that the Kremlin may curtail some of CNN's activities in Russia as a result of the incident. The Putin interview was billed by the network as rare and unprecedented access to Russia's powerful Prime Minister. But the 30-minute session in which Putin lectured the U.S. on the history of the conflict in Georgia was reduced to a few short sound bites. After the break, the credit crunch and the U.S. newspaper industry. Is it in free fall?